Hello American literature friends. This is a short terminology video. We are going to cover the concept of flashback or analepsis if you're an ancient Greek and want to use that term. A flashback dates all the way back to the ancient Greeks. They gave the concept of it to us, flashback, and the opposite of it, flash forward, which they would have called a prolepsis. The ancient Greeks would have called a flashback or an analepsis, it would have been like a vision or a trance that somebody had where the past or some truth, some episode of the past came to them. Whereas a flash forward, the prolepsis, would have been some kind of prophecy or something like that. You can see in classical terminology, analepsis refers to a type of vision or trance, which that's how they would have gotten it into a play or something like that. From the past or unconscious mind is restored in the present. In contemporary terms, flashback is an interjected scene that takes the narrative back in time from the current point in the story, the current time, the current timeline. Flashbacks are often used to relate events that happened before the story's primary action or to give relevant backstory. So what's important to understand about a flashback is, first of all, you have to have the present timeline, the present chronology of the story. For our example, we're going to use Ambrose Bierce's story, An Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge, where the second section is a flashback to Bierce and his wife, to Peyton Farquhar and his wife being tricked by the Union scout who tricks him into trying to come and burn the bridge. That's a flashback because the current time period of the story, if you start from when the story starts in the first section, he's standing on the bridge about to be hung. So the current timeline of the story is really only a minute or two, maybe 5 or 10 minutes at most, however long it takes for the sergeant to step off of the board, for him to fall, and for his neck to snap. So the whole story could last 60, 90 seconds. That's the present timeline of the story. The second section of the story jumps you back to maybe the day before, maybe a day or two before, to when he was tricked into trying to burn the bridge, what he's about to be hung, what he's being hung for in the present timeline. It does what this says, gives relevant backstory. The relevant backstory it gives is how he got to the bridge, how he got tricked into trying to burn it, and also why they were waiting for him to do it and how they caught him, because they knew that he was coming because they tricked him into trying to burn the bridge. So that's the relevant backstory. That's what that flashback section 2 of the story, that's why it's in the story, is to give him a motive for trying to burn the bridge and explain how they tricked him into trying to do it. So that is the flashback. It jumps off of the present timeline, that minute or two where he's being hung in the present time of the story, jumps off of that timeline back to before it and gives you an explanation for how and why he's being hung, how he ended up there. For a little more detail, it's an interjected scene. Again, clearly in an Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge, it's interjected in between part 1 and part 3. So it's interjected right in the middle to explain how he got there and what he's trying to do there and how he got caught. Flashbacks are often used to recount events that happen before the story's primary sequence of events. The primary sequence of events in Owl Creek Bridge is simply him hanging, and then him imagining that he escapes and then snapping back to reality. So that's the story's primary sequence of events. And then the flashback in section 2 fills in that crucial backstory for you. And then, as I said, a flash forward is a prolepsis. It's the opposite. In the original sense, it would have been used in a story almost like a prophecy or a foreshadowing of what was coming. And the flashback, the analepsis, gives you that context or backstory or fills in that information you need to understand what's happening in the present time of the story. So that's a flashback. That's an explanation of it. The thing that a flashback is not is just a sentence or two like, oh, I ate pizza last night, or oh, I went to the store yesterday. That's not a flashback. That's just a detail or two. A flashback is a full, complete scene from the past that gets interjected into the present time of the story. So part of what makes a flashback is that it's this full, complete scene that the story flashes back to, not just a little detail or a sentence or two. It's a full, complete scene. The story has to jump off of its current timeline back into a full, complete scene from the past. That's how you flash back to it, is you flash back to something big enough and complete enough to flash back to. If you have questions about that or want other examples of flashbacks and how they're used, I'll be happy to dig into them. Even if you just look this up on Wikipedia, they point out that maybe the most famous flashback in Western literature is the books 9, 10, 11, and 12 of the Odyssey, which is the flashback. Odysseus tells this long flashback about where he has been for the past 10 years, what happened to him after the Trojan War. So this huge chunk of the Odyssey by Homer, this foundational work of Western literature, is a flashback. If you want, like I said, if you want more examples or better examples or different kinds of examples of flashbacks, get with me and I'll be happy to dig deeper into that concept with you. But that's a basic explanation of it and a good example from our current syllabus.